Okay, so budgeting basics. Again, my name is Hannah Haft. I'm the financial literacy counselor in the Office of Student Financial Services. So, what is a budget? Budgeting is very nuanced. It can mean a lot of different things. So, a budget is essentially a plan or estimate of the amount of money needed for a cost of living or to be used for a specific purpose. And you may be wondering why budgeting is important. It essentially helps you reach your life goals. It satisfies your needs and wants without overspending. You can avoid accumulating unnecessary debts and fees. You can relieve your emotional stress, develop better financial habits, and match your expenses to your income. So budgeting is just one step for you to help in reaching financial wellness. So financial wellness, I think, is a basis for many of the wellness components because if you can't purchase anything or you can't afford to do anything, you're not going to be so well. So budgeting is that first step towards reaching financial wellness. Budgeting is necessary because it identifies and defines your financial goals. It helps you manage your money, and then it directs your money flow so you know exactly where your money is going. It all has a job. So you're not wondering where it went, but you know where it's going. Here are just some steps to budgeting. So the first step would be to review your income and resources. So I always say that you should underestimate your income and overestimate your expenses. So then at the end, you could end up with a surplus if you understand. So overestimate your expenses and then underestimate your income. Track your spending. So over the course of 3 months, take note of what your expenses are and what you should be spending. So a lot of people will say just look at it for a month, but that doesn't really give you a good idea on what you spend each month on certain things because your water bill could be different from one month to the next based on how you use it. So you want to be able to know kind of what you're looking at and what you can expect for the following 3 months. Create a budget tailored for you. So I would say this all the time, but budgeting is not one size fits all. You'll see later on when I go through different types of budgeting, like the different budgeting techniques. I actually made my own, and it's comprised of like 4 or 5 different budgeting methods. So make sure it's tailored for you and it helps you because if you don't like how your budget's set up, then you're not going to use it. And then finally, adjust and maintain your budget. It becomes necessary to cut costs and stay within your resources. So make sure you're going back and reevaluating your budget each month. So budgeting has expense categories, and so typically there's just 3: fixed expenses, variable expenses, and discretionary expenses. So your fixed expenses are those that are consistent monthly payments. So that would be like your rent, any loans that you have, your insurance. Your variable expenses, those are regular, but they vary in amount. So you regularly go to the grocery store, you have to pay your utilities, you often have to get gas for your car, but you have those every so often or every month, every 2 weeks, whatever, every week. So you know that those expenses are coming, but they vary in amount. And then your discretionary expenses. So those are funds that are spent on personal wants. So that's your fun money or your mad money, as we'll talk about later. Eating out, vacation, entertainment, all of those things fall under your discretionary expenses. So this is a fun little slide. It's not meant to shame you in any way. It's just meant to show you the effects budgeting has and the effects that being smart on what you're spending with your student loan money, can have on your total savings. So you can see that by, brewing coffee at home, you can save over $9,000 by the end of it, and that's the loan savings plus interest. And so how we figure that out is you do all the calculations for each coffee brewing. So $5 a coffee times 25 days per week or 25 weekdays per month ends up equaling over 4 years $5,000. Whereas home brew $8 bag of coffee, 1 bag per month. So $8 a month ends up in 4 years you spend $320. So that's a huge savings there. So that loan savings is $4,680. And then you'll want to figure out the interest savings. And so this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So you'll want to figure out your yearly interest, which is $4,680 multiplied by 7.08%, which is the Graduate Plus loan, because most of your living expenses will be from your Graduate Plus loan. And that equals $331.31. So that is your yearly interest for $4,680. So next, you'll multiply your yearly interest by the number of years you've had the loan. So 4 years in school and then 10 years in repayment. So we'll say 14 years. So take 333 or 331.31 multiplied by 14 years equals $4,638.76. So that's the amount of interest that you'd be saving by brewing coffee at home versus going to Starbucks. And so then next, you just figure out the total savings and add those two numbers up to get $9,318.76. So that is a lot of savings over 14 years that you would get by brewing coffee just at home. So like I said, this is not meant to shame you in any way, but just here to kind of show you the impact interest has and the impact budgeting has in making those smart financial decisions. So more effects on budgeting. Budgeting can actually save you all of these things: the origination costs for unneeded money, interest costs accrued on unneeded money, the effects of capitalization on unneeded money, and then the possibility of extra money spent on wants and not spent on needs. So if you are using your student loan money to buy concert tickets, like that is going to just impact how much you budget, and your interest, your total accrued interest in the end. Here are some common budgeting mistakes. So failure to save. So most people forget to pay themselves first. So you definitely want to plan your savings into your budget. And I wouldn't do this with student loans because you don't want to save student loan money because it has interest. But when you get into a real paying job and you get a living wage, saving is going to be definitely important. Irregular expenses. So many people forget to save and plan for those irregular expenses. So like insurance is one of those things. Like you can pay that every 6 months, or you can pay it every month. But if you wanted to pay it every 6 months, like in your bill was $300 every 6 months, you would need to save like $100 every 3 months, or $50 every month, or whatever for 6 months to be able to afford that payment. So many people don't plan in those irregular expenses into their budget. So make sure you do that. Oftentimes people don't have wiggle room. They squeeze their spending plan so tightly, so they don't have any flexibility if there was something to happen or something to just come up where you wanted to spend money on. And then finally, the last one is there's no mad money. So many people forget to budget in a treat for themselves, like going shopping. I can spend $100 on shopping this month. That's great. So many people forget to include in that money for discretionary funds, mad money. Setting financial goals is the next slide. And it's super important to know what you want to save for and what you have for your financial goals. So these are just some steps that you can do. So identify and write them down, long-term, medium-term, and short-term goals. Make them achievable and practical and owned by everyone in your household. So don't just hold yourself accountable for that goal. Make sure everyone in your household is accountable for that goal if they're all on the same budget. Write them into your monthly budget. So make sure that's a part of your budget so every time you're looking at that budget, you're like, okay, I'm saving for this vacation. I'm saving for this car. So it'll keep you motivated. And then adjust them as necessary. Some months you may have more expenses and you may not be able to save as much that month, and that's totally okay. But just make sure you're flexible and you can adjust your goals as necessary. And to calculate how much you need to save for each month for a goal, just take the total dollars needed for the goal and then divide it by the total number of months to get how much you need to save each month. It's super important to create an emergency fund. So I don't know if any of you have ever looked at Dave Ramsey's baby steps, but the emergency fund is his first step. And it's a first step that you should be, doing in any type of budgeting. And so create and maintain that emergency fund. So initially, it should be between $500 and $1,000, depending on your income and your debt load. And then eventually, you'll need to increase this 3 to 6 months worth of income in your savings. So that is going to take a long time to do, or maybe, for students right now, it's going to take a long time to do because, you're living on financial aid. But, it won't be, be instantaneous. It won't be a couple months. It could be like a year before you get 3 to 6 months worth of income saved. You also need to develop the attitude that this is only used for emergencies. Let's say you were let go from your job, you have unexpected medical expenses or any other financial crises. So a good example of that would be the current pandemic that's going on. If people, I know I don't have 3 to 6 months worth of income saved up. I am on the second baby step of Dave Ramsey's, which is paying down debt. But, we don't, if we were to be laid off and we didn't have any income during this pandemic, that 3 to 6 months would probably, save a lot of lives and for people to have that saved up in their account. So it wouldn't, so you definitely want to make sure you have that saved up for, if the case were to, like this pandemic were to happen again or something else were to happen. But saving that money is definitely important. And then just make sure you're resupplying that emergency fund the next month. So now I'm going to talk about different types of budgeting. I'm going to pause and see if Gina has any questions first.
Yes, I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
The first question is this is going back to the coffee slide.
Okay.
Is it possible for you to provide the full calculation for the total savings, specifically the interest saving portion?
Yes, so I have the whole calculation written in the notes section of the presentation. So when you are able to get access to the presentation, you'll see all my notes down there too.
Okay, perfect. Next question I have is, can students use their unsubsidized Stafford loan for living expenses instead of the Grad Plus loan if they don't need to take out more?
What was the last part? Sorry.
I'm sorry. If they said if they don't need to take out more than the maximum offered for the unsubsidized loan.
Yeah, so it all depends on kind of how much the cost of your direct expenses are, because we always use your direct expenses, or we always use your unsubsidized Stafford, or the lowest, we'll use the unsubsidized Stafford first before we use the Graduate Plus loan. If you have a scholarship first, like if you have a scholarship, that would be applied to your direct expenses first, and then your unsubsidized Stafford, and then your Graduate Plus loan. But if you don't have a scholarship, then it would just be your unsubsidized Stafford, then your Graduate Plus loan. So we primarily just do your Grad Plus loan for your living expenses. It may add up to where you may not need to. Yeah, pretty much no. I'm just going to say no, unless Gina, you have a different explanation for that.
No, I would agree with that, unless you're planning on paying your direct expenses out of pocket. Otherwise, yeah, you would need to use the Grad Plus loan for your living expenses.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. And that's all the questions I have for right now.
Sure. Okay, so there is just a few of these. I think there may be 4, maybe 5. So the first one is really simple, zero-based budgeting. There's one rule: your income minus your expenses must equal 0 at the end of each month. It's as simple as that. So work out to the last penny how much you have coming in for your income, and then write out list every single monthly expense that comes out, and that includes essentials and non-essentials. So every single discretionary fund. And then just simply subtract your income from your expenses, and the amount should be 0. If you have $1 left in there, you're not doing zero-based budgeting. You got to find a job for that dollar. So pretty much this budgeting method, every dollar has a job. This is great for students that are on financial aid. This is another great budgeting method that is for students that are on financial aid. So the refund and goals-driven budget, if you have a goal of refunding a certain amount at the end of each quarter, this is essentially how you would reach that. So you choose a goal, so refunding your financial aid, work out how much it will cost, and then list what you're spending and your income, always with the goal in mind. And then work out what you can contribute to your goal every month. This could mean ditching other non-essential items that you regularly spend on and redirecting them towards your goal. So pretty much it's as simple as it sounds. Just have a goal. You want to refund $5,000 at the end of each quarter. What's that going to cost you? So just try and figure that. This is a very popular budgeting method, the 50-30-20. It is a no-fuss method for busy people on a steady income. Essentially, 50% of your earnings is spent on living expenses, such as rent, food, and bills. 30% of your earnings is spent on things you don't need, such as going out, going to the movies, so your discretionary funds. And you'll spend 20% of your earnings on financial goals, such as saving or reducing debt. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You just take your income and divide it by these percentages, and then it will spit out a number, and that's what you go on. The envelope method. Now, this method is for those of you who have a lot of willpower. I do not have willpower. I have tried this budget, and it has epically failed every single time. It's a cash-only method where you physically divide your money into different envelopes. So you'll label the envelopes with different categories, such as groceries, entertainment, rent, all of that stuff. You'll work out how much you spend on each category every month. When you get paid, you pay your rent, your mortgage bills out of your checking account, and then whatever is left over from in your checking account, you take it out in cash and then divide it between your envelopes. So you only spend out of the designated envelope for each category. That was my problem. I always borrowed money from other envelopes. And so the red box says, don't borrow money from other envelopes. Once an envelope is empty, it's empty. You just need to carefully plan each envelope and cover what you need. So that was my biggest downfall. And it's okay to fail at these because you will never get it right the first time. You're going to have to try a few different methods to figure out which one works best for you. And clearly this one did not work best for me. All right, so my budgeting method. So this is a DIY budget that has components of several different types of budgets. So what I do is I figure out my income. So what goes into my checking account? I write down the dollar amounts for all of my monthly expenses, except for my discretionary funds. I get a planner with month pages only. I write down due dates for all of my bills, when everything's going to come out of my account. I add up how much money is already allocated between each paycheck, subtract that number from my checking account income, and that is the amount that I have left to spend for my discretionary and some variable expenses. So I don't budget out things like groceries or shopping or things like that. I budget out what I know is coming out each month. So that would be my utilities, any subscriptions I have, my rent, anything like that. And then I write down when all my paydays are as well. So I think this budget method is fantastic. It works great for me. So feel free to check it out and try it out, see how you like it. But it has tons of different components within it. And if you make your own budgeting method, let me know how it works, and maybe you could end up in this presentation next year. So something I want to talk to you about is step-down spending. So essentially, step-down spending is the process of changing your spending habits incrementally. So spending reduced gradually as opposed to eliminating spending on an item completely. So the more steps you take down, the greater the savings will be. And many people do fail their budgets because they feel deprived and they feel resentful that they have to, not spend as much or not spend what they want to spend or not purchase what they want to purchase. So this is a great concept for those type of people. So essentially for step-down spending, you take a look at your complete budget, whatever form that is, consider where your money goes and pick one expense. Reduce that expense, make that reduced expense your new normal, and then move on to the next expense. Essentially, the concept is you start at your most expensive, which is the top, that red box. You take steps down, and as you get to the least expensive, the little green box at the bottom, that should be where you're spending the least amount of money. And so this is an example. So going to get pancakes. So the most expensive would be going to a sit-down restaurant, which would be like IHOP, Denny's, Perkins. It doesn't feel like it would seem that expensive, but it adds up. The next step down would be getting pancakes from a fast food place, so McDonald's, Burger King, places like that. The next step down would be buying frozen pancakes or dry mix. So Eggo waffles, Aunt Jemima mix, Bisquick mix, stuff like that. And then the cheapest option, which is the most time consuming, is you prepare from scratch. So you use ingredients you most likely already have in your pantry. So that is the cheapest option. So you can kind of go through your budget and pick and decide which expenses you can take a step down from. And so here are some more examples for that. So housing, step 1, rent your house. Step 2, rent an apartment. Step 3, find a roommate. Step 4, cheapest option, rent just a room. So you can kind of go through all of those later on and kind of see if you get any ideas on what you could possibly step down. I would love to know what in your budget you could step down. So let me know. So before we move on to budgeting apps and stuff, I want to see if there's any questions.
We do have one question about how the CARES Act is affecting the interest on student loans.
Sure. I will save that for the end of the presentation because that isn't budgeting, so we'll save that.
Okay.
So some budgeting apps. So here are just some 6 apps here. They have all been vetted. All of them are free, except for YNAB has a free trial, and then you have to pay for it. But Mint and YNAB, they do it all. YNAB actually stands for You Need a Budget, because we all need a budget. Splitwise and Divvy, those help split bills between roommates. Good Budget is pretty basic and more like the envelope method. It's super simple. And then online banking is your online banking portal, so you can use that for a budgeting app as well. Here are some other online resources. My personal favorite, I use the Kiplinger Household Budget Worksheet to get my budget started, so I'm a big fan of that. It doesn't save your budget, so if you want it to save, make sure you export that because it has that option. And yeah, just some other resources there as well. So this is the end of the presentation. That is my contact information. So if you do have any questions or do you want to request the presentation, feel free to reach out to me through that email address there. And I will have Gina stop the recording and I will answer any questions.